Greetings! In this video, I'll be covering the bare essentials to making a co-op mission. We'll assume you have some familiarity with the Eden editor in ARMA 3. If you're not familiar with that, you should get some practice with it first. This video and any others that may follow are explicitly for how to make a mission with STMF. For new mission makers, this should be enough to start putting some of your ideas into reality. For returning mission makers, this should serve as a refresher on the absolute basics. Before we get into doing anything, make sure that you have some form of text editor. At worst, you could always use Notepad. However, it's highly recommended that you download something like Notepad++ or Visual Studio Code. The first thing you're going to want to do is grab the correct mission template off of the Mission Maker Gitlab repository. The simplest way we can do that is to log into Gitlab using the web browser of your choice, downloading the mission template repo, and extracting the contents of the downloaded zip. There are a few folders contained within that zip. You'll want to find the folder named STMF cooperative template.vr. Once you find it, copy this folder over to your missions directory. If you've saved stuff in the mission editor before, your missions directory is likely to be in one of two places, shown on screen now. If you've created a profile just for ShackTech, it will likely be the second option. For example, for me, my missions directory is located in documents/arma3 other profiles/chrisjaw/missions. If it's not there, you can create the directory like so. Just make sure that it's under the correct ARMA 3 profile. You'll be coming to this missions directory a lot, so having it bookmarked or otherwise easily accessible is heavily recommended. Now, let's get into ARMA. When you boot into the game, you'll want to go to the editor and pick whatever terrain you want to make your mission in. For this demonstration, we'll be toying around in Altus. We're going to need to find out the right suffix for this terrain. We can do this by saving an empty mission file. Like so. After, we'll want to look into the missions directory that we found earlier. Within it, you should see your newly saved mission file with a suffix. In this case, it's simply .altus. This is important, as we'll now be applying that suffix to the co-op mission template. Simply rename the folder to have a suffix with .altus. Tabbing back into ARMA, we'll now open the mission template. If everything was done right, you should be on the terrain of your choice with quite a few entities. Let's go over each of these things briefly. First, there are the player slots. For convenience, there are BLUFOR and INFOR slots already made. To the right are some of the STMF modules. You'll be able to define the briefing file, radio issuance, and equipment limitations like NVGs or flashlights. As far as this demonstration goes, though, we'll rarely be touching these. Further right of those are the vehicle spawners. From left to right, they are the light, heavy, air, and boat spawners. You'll note that there are seemingly two spawners of the same type next to each helipad. That's because one is for BLUFOR defined vehicles and another is for INFOR. You can figure which one is which by hovering over the spawner object and reading the class name. Back over in the back left corner, there is the headless client. No need to ever touch this or move it. Just make sure it's in your mission. Immediately adjacent to this is a marker called Garrison Spawn. Wherever this is placed, or where AI will spawn right before they're teleported into buildings. We'll go over this again, just make sure not to delete this mark. Finally, above all the other entities are the example Badmin zones. Don't delete them for now. We'll get into how these work soon as well. Alright, I'll take a moment to briefly describe the type of mission I'm making here. Players are going to be BLUFOR, BLUFOR will be US Army armed with the M4 loadout. Red 4/OPFOR will be the Russians in desert uniforms, armed with AK-74s. As far as intent, the players are to fight along the southwest side of Altus, with the final objective being the town of Zaros. They'll be able to start or FDS somewhere around the town of Laka, and air support will consist of Reapers using H6s. It's nothing complicated, but this mission concept will cover most of the things that goes into making missions. Alright, let's start out by deleting the IND4 slots. We're not using them, no need to have them. Next, let's delete the BLUFOR slots that we don't need. We don't need the Armor Battalion. This is not an armor-only mission. We don't need the squad structure where Matt and MMG are embedded. We don't need Tango, Mike, or Sierra. We don't need any of the weapons teams, but we do want Logi. Let's keep that. We don't need any of the squad Vics. And we don't need the Phantoms, Pavement, or Ugly. As far as the players go, we should be left with the standard infantry company along with 2 Reapers and Logi. Let's drag all of them over to the Altus airport. This will be the briefing space where the players hang out. Make sure to drag the rectangle area marker that defines the FDS zone so that players can deploy within the briefing area. Next, let's drag over the spawners. We'll need the light vehicle spawners, both for Logi and for player trucks. We'll also need a few of the air spawners for Reaper's vehicles. We can delete the IND4 spawners, as well as the heavy and boat spawners. We don't need them. Alright, let's quickly load in the mission in multiplayer to check a few things. 1, to check that our slots are what we wanted. And 2, to quickly grab the uniforms and loadouts for the faction we want. Click on play at the top of your screen along the bar, then go to play in multiplayer so we get a slotting screen. No need to actually connect to the internet for this, just host a LAN server. Everything looks mostly good. The only things that are off are that the Reaper slots don't specify what vehicle they'll be, and I don't want 3 Logi teams. Let's quickly back out to the editor and fix that. First, let's fix the Reaper slot labels. This can be done by editing the leader of the unit and editing their role description string. This is just for reading purposes, no need for a class name. It's just something that players can understand. We'll put in AH6 Little Bird for the 2 Reaper groups. As for the extra Logi teams, we'll just delete those units. Alright, let's try to play in multiplayer again, review, and then play the mission as any of the player slots. When we load in, we'll use the Add Action menu to access the Mission Maker Helper menu. Then we'll go to Uniform Compare. We're going to pick the uniform and loadout for the 2 factions in play. Doesn't matter which side is which, all this will do is help inspect and export the uniforms and loadouts to our clipboard. Once you're satisfied, at the top right, click Copy Loadouts to export them. Tab out, and once tabbed out, paste them into an empty file for use in a little bit. Next, we're going to want to head to the mission directory, specifically the co-op mission template that we're editing right now, and find the description.ext file. Open that up with your text editor and find where STMF_loadouts and STMF_uniforms are defined. We'll be removing the definitions for gear, as we don't have an in-for, and we'll be replacing the definitions of west and east for both the loadout and uniform set with the ones we pasted into the empty file. As a note, it is recommended that you use the AI variant of a loadout for the AI faction. You can see the proper format on screen now. Once done, save the file, go back into ARMA, relaunch the mission, and we should be able to verify that our players are in the kit of our choice. We can also view OPFOR to verify their side of things. Next is by far the most intimidating part of mission making to someone new, Badmin Sandbox. This is where those zones at the corner of the map come into play. This is how we define where enemies garrison, where enemies will spawn when they start to charge at players, and roughly what assets will get thrown at players, although admins can spawn whatever they want as well. There is a mission Gitlab wiki page that goes over this framework in detail. It'll be down in the description and in the pinned comment below. This is the most reading you'll have to do, but I strongly recommend you do read this. Still, I'll also be going over the extreme basics in this video, but there will be some gaps in information if you don't do that reading. There are 4 types of zones: Defender, Attacker, Hybrid AO, and Hybrid FOB. Defender zones are the simplest. Enemies that are selected for these zones will garrison the structures in the area. They can also be set up to have roaming patrols. Attacker zones work differently. When a player enters an attacker zone, enemy units will begin spawning in the distance and begin approaching and attacking the players. Hybrid AOs are just attacker zones, where the enemies will only come from the direction of hybrid FOBs. And hybrid FOBs are just special defender zones with the extra functionality of being spawn points for hybrid AOs. That was a lot. Stay with me, this will hopefully make sense when paired with the reading and how we'll use them now. For this mission, I really only need a single hybrid AO to encompass, well, the AO. And we'll also have a few FOBs in and around it to garrison the structures and also act as spawn points or spawn directions for the enemies that counterattack the players. Let's create the markers for these things now. Okay, I'm satisfied with that. Let's take account of all the zone names. These zone names could have been named anything, but there is a naming convention. It's more for your sanity, T&Es, and the admin. Lastly, let's make sure that our garrison spawn is not in the water, and somewhere AI units can stand and spawn in. This should be well out of the way of wherever the players are going to be, so this corner of the map will do. Save, and let's tab out and head back into that mission folder. In that mission folder, open up the init.sqf file with your text editor. Take a look at the segment below the beginning of exported data and above end of exported data. Delete everything in between there. Next, take a look at the STMF_draw tools_markers array. Should be one of the first few lines in this file. We're going to populate that array with the names of the marker zones we created in ARMA. Make sure your FOBs and or defended area marks are always before your AO or attacker zone in this collection. Else, you won't be able to access them for the next step, as they'll be treated as underneath the larger zone. Once you've got all your zones defined in that collection, save the file and tab back into ARMA. We're going to play our mission as multiplayer again. Once you're back in, open up your map and right-click on any empty space where there are no zones. A small menu will pop up. Hit Show All, global or local, it doesn't matter. This will reveal all your zones right now for ease of editing and configuring them. Next, right-click on one of your zones, click Populate, and begin configuring each of your zones to your liking. Once you're done with your zone, save it with Initialize. Repeat this process for each one of the zones that you need to configure. When you're done with all of your zones, hit Export. This will copy all of your zone configs to your clipboard. From here, tab out, open up that init.sqf again, and paste right under beginning of exported data. Save the file from there. To verify that it was properly set up, exit the mission, replay it, and try to edit one of your zones. If it already is pre-populated, you know that it's working. We're actually almost done as far as the actual mission making goes. Next, we'll fix up what vehicles can spawn from the spawners. First, we'll make sure that the BLUFOR factories are reading from the correct file. Find the factory module in the corner and open it. By default, it should be looking for factory_types.sqf. Once that's been verified, tab out and open the exact file in the mission folder with your text editor. We can delete the entire factory tank collection as well as the factory boat collection. In the factory air collection, we'll also delete the A10 and AH64 entries. We'll keep the transport helos as an option just in case, and obviously the AH6s as well. Save the file, tab back into ARMA, play the mission, deploy out to the spawners, and verify that everything's working. Next, we'll go to the Equipment Settings module. We'll really just review these options. I personally am not going to make any changes. This is where you'd select who has radios, whether or not players have flashlights or lasers, etc. Next is the briefing. Open up the module and make sure that the BLUFOR briefing is pointing to the right file. This should be briefing.sqf by default. Tab out and open that exact file with your text editor. Create whatever tasks you want, specify any admin nodes, and write up your briefing. Dslyecxi created a tool for writing briefings using Markdown. It's been included in the description and the pinned comment below. I'm going to breeze past this whole step of the process as it is one of the least technical aspects of mission making. Once you're done, save it. You can verify it's in a good state by playing your mission and viewing the respective briefing tabs. Now we'll start cleaning this up and making the last few adjustments before we export this. Open up ARMA and navigate to the Attributes tab at the top of the screen and click Multiplayer. Edit the mission summary to your liking. This is the text that displays during slotting at the top of the screen. Click OK and save the mission when you're done. Next, let's handle the mission title data. Once again, go to Attributes at the top left of your screen and open the General menu. Change the mission title to your choice whilst following the name convention. For example, my mission contains 121 players, and I'm naming it by example. In the author text box, enter your username, click OK to confirm everything, and save the mission again. Next, we're going to have to rename the entire mission folder to the mission name. The game won't allow us to edit the folder while we're actively using the mission file, so we're just going to open an empty mission temporarily. Once that's done, tab out and make sure no files from the folder are open. When you're sure, rename the entire mission folder to the same thing you named your mission in the General menu. For example, STMF _CO _121 by example _v1 .altus. Open up ARMA and open the mission in the editor. It should be under that new name now. Play it in multiplayer to check that the mission title at the top is correct, and do the same for the mission summary. Finally, tab out once more and open up description.ext with your text editor. Fill in the author, onload name, and onload mission variables with the strings of your choice. These are the strings of text that show up when you start loading into the mission after slotting. Save this when you're done, and verify that these are how you want them by playing the mission in multiplayer. Let's quickly make an FDS zone so that the players don't have to drive so far. By default, any marker with the prefix FDS will be treated as an FDS zone. So let's just create one here. Lastly, we'll go over a step that can be done at any time in this process: environmental values. Navigate to Attributes at the top of your screen and click on the Environmental menu. Here you can change the time of day and weather to your liking. I'll add a bit of cloudiness, but won't touch this too much. We're done making things. Now it's just time to export it. Good practice is to test your mission and make sure your zones are working properly, your spawners all work, and do a once over for all your briefing materials. Once you've done that, go back into the editor and export your mission into a .pbo file. Do this by navigating to the Scenario tab at the very top left corner and exporting it to single player or multiplayer. I'll export to multiplayer, but it doesn't ultimately matter which you do. Next, tab out to desktop. You'll want to go to your ARMA 3 game directory, as in your Steam apps /commons/ARMA 3 directory. Inside there should be an MP missions folder. Within that should be your newly exported mission. This will be the file that you upload to the server. On your web browser of choice, head to the ShackTech forums, log in if needed, and navigate to the missions page. It'll be at the top right of the navigation panel on the forums. Upload your file there and it should now be on the server. From here, follow the ticket guidelines page and/or reference other mission tickets for Gitlab. As of making this video, the Gitlab wiki is undergoing a rewrite, so I don't want to refer to any specific information that may soon be antiquated. Whenever you are done, it should look something like this. Maybe not exactly. Take care to make sure the proper labels are attached to it, including co-op and needs T&E. That's it. You're done. If all goes well, your mission will be tested by T&E and either get approved for play or be sent back to you with a list of things to fix. At the very least, hopefully this video helps get those creative juices flowing. Big thanks to Witty for basically being the muscle behind all of the documentation rewrite. If me or someone else ends up making more mission making related videos, there'll be a link to the playlist for that in the description below. Furthermore, there's always Mission Maker General if you have any specific questions you want to ask.